This episode of Greenhouse Grower to Grower is brought to you by Westbrook Greenhouse Systems. Westbrook is a North American leader for greenhouse structures, heating, curtains, benches, and installation. Their track record of retaining long term employees means that you can trust them with your next greenhouse project. Whether you need a freestanding, gutter vent, peak vent, open roof, glass, or poly house, Westbrook has a solution for you. You can find them online at westbrooksystems.com, follow them on LinkedIn, or visit their booth at Mance, TPIE, Cultivate, TNLA, or the Canadian Greenhouse Conference. Welcome to Greenhouse Grower to Grower, the podcast where we talk to growers from across the greenhouse industry about market trends, innovation, their biggest challenges and opportunities, and more. I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower. This year's Southern Garden Tour takes place June 3rd through June 5th and features plant trials at Young's Plant Farm in Alabama, the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia, and Metrolina Greenhouses North Carolina facilities. This past week, I had a great conversation with the trial managers at each location. Dr. Mark Yelanich, Director of R&D at Metrolina, Penny Merritt-Price, Product Development Manager at Young's Plant Farm, and John Ruter, Director of the Trial Gardens at the University of Georgia. We talked about the trials process from beginning to end, what's new for this year, and why these trials benefit both growers and plant consumers. Here's our conversation. Well, we're time again for the Southern Garden Tour for this year, which is coming up in just a couple of months. So this week we've got the full team gathered together to talk about it. So I want to get the conversation started with just an overview of the Southern Garden Tour, specifically how Metrolina Greenhouses, Young's Plant Farm, and the University of Georgia all came together to put on an event like this, and kind of what your goals are from year to year with these trials.
Yeah, going back, I think the first year we did it was 2017. Is that right, Penny? I was looking back at
Um,
the Facebook page.
I think it actually might have, so Young started the we were the last ones to start a trial garden. We started in 2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think, University of Georgia was the first, and then Metrolina, and then Young's. And when we started planning our open house day, I reached out to Metrolina to find out when theirs was. And so right from the beginning,
Okay.
you're coordinating. But Metrolina was the one that really took the leadership of naming the event and, starting a web page. So that might be what you're thinking of, Dr. Mark.
Yeah, yeah. I was trying to think of back, like when we all kind of got together, and I think Dr. Armitage was still there too, right, at University of Georgia.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
Alan retired in, 2012,
Yeah,
took over in 2013, so,
yeah.
yeah.
Or maybe he was still coming to the open house dates or something.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
he still shows up for everything.
And I was at California Spring Trials with Dr. A. We were talking, about the same thing, how we used to be, have a pretty direct role in putting everything together. And, it's like in my mind, these are great chances for the entire industry to come together, not just to do one visit. It takes a lot out of somebody's schedule to, do a trip to visit one university or one operation. But the fact that you're able to put everything together in still a short amount of time,
Right.
and schedule it out so that you can go to this place one day, this place another day.
And it's
Um,
yeah, it's
yeah,
it's
just makes a
all
lot of sense.
yeah, it's all kind of drivable too. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
you start at one, you can go to the other, and it's like
pretty much
straight line.
by 85.
Yep. So that always worked out nice.
Yeah.
Okay. When we look at this year's trials, I'd like to find out, specifically what changes that each of your sites are looking to do this year. Anything new that you want to try this year that you want to let attendees know about before they make the journey down that way.
So here
Oh, go ahead.
at Young's, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Here at Young's, we do try to do something new and interesting every year. I work with the marketing department to come up with new ideas.
Yeah.
This year, we were really excited to do a collaboration with Food U. And Food U is a program at Auburn University where they are providing student grown food for on site consumption. And so what we did is as part of our, alongside the side by side variety comparison trials, we also put in a whole example of an edible landscape. So it includes trees and shrubs and edible flowers and fruits
Okay.
and vegetables. So um, visitors can come and see that this year for us. And then at the same time, they can sign up to see the Showcase Edible Garden at Auburn University, which is on the rooftop of the Laurel Hotel. So
Okay.
it's quite a destination. And then just to take it to the next level and make it really fun, we did a lot of things on open house day that will incorporate the whole edible gardening theme.
Okay. John, what about in Georgia? What new do you guys have planned for this year?
Yeah, so in the past we've done theme plantings. Like one year we did salvia. You know, one year we did plants from South Africa, and actually Rose Rosette gave us an opportunity.
Mhm.
To because there's an area of our garden that sits right next to an asphalt parking lot. It's a white building, the greenhouses. It faces southwest. It's just the worry about the worst place you could grow plants here in the South. And but it's got a little bit of slope to it, so it drains well. And so we've actually put in a xeriscape garden. We jokingly call it the desert
Okay.
out there, but we're having success with things like a big show this spring has been Cistus creticus, which is from the island of Crete. And it's a plant that you would commonly see in California.
Okay.
So you don't see it back here, and so we're just we're trying some plants from Mediterranean regions or warmer area regions than what we have, and some are successes and some are not, but that's what we do in trial gardens. So yeah, so that's one novel thing that we've has risen of the ashes of losing all our rose collection to leaving us with this location that is just a really nice place to talk about xeriscaping and plants that do well here in the southeast zone 8.
Well, I like that approach of taking adversity and turning it into an opportunity to try something new. And
Yeah,
that's really refreshing to see.
yeah.
Um, Mark, at Metrolina, what are you looking at for this year in terms of anything new?
The some of it is just going back to the basics. So, like, one of our goals is anything new that comes to the market for 2025 is, we want to have it in the garden. So I think this year we've been pretty successful in getting that. We're always like tweaking stuff here and there. The one thing is um, Penny had a digital trial book, so we stole that idea from Penny. So now we're gonna have like kill a bunch of trees this year. We're gonna go to electronic, but I mean, like, we kind of shifted some stuff around, like lobelia, and the forever we've been doing them in the ground. So now we're kind of like moving them into baskets so that,
Mhm.
it's more realistic for the consumer.
Mhm.
Um, this is the first year for perennials. Um, Usually we do 2 seasons. So
Okay.
we do, you know, one winter between them. So this will be the first year. We had to like shift some stuff around to finally be able to pull this off. So the stuff we have in this garden will be there for 3 seasons.
Oh,
So
nice.
that's
Okay.
kind of the start of that. So this year we'll have um, 1 year and then something that's been there last year and this year. So and just normal stuff. I mean, we kind of made a mistake last year. Like we had the petunias in the same spot for a couple of years, so now we kind of rotated those out so we get a better show.
Okay. Well, you bring up a good point, Mark. Is the lessons or the changes from year to year. Even something simple as that can make a huge difference. I think. As you look at what each of your operations are trying for this year, anything that you saw last year that said, this didn't work out so well that we wanted to make some changes as we got into 2025. I know it's not easy to make, wholesale changes from year to year, but, Mark, you mentioned the petunias and then the addition of the digital book as well, just for attendees to use. Is there anything else that you learned from last year that you're applying to this year?
I mean, just the importance of rotation and
Yeah.
like in a garden where you're like doing stuff the same thing year after year.
Mm.
This year was just getting everything to fit.
Yeah.
My team, Sam and Kayla, you know, uh, we were like shifting stuff around all last week. We started planning on Monday, and they actually got everything done by Tuesday. So it's probably one of our fastest years ever. So I'm really proud of the team and everything getting that done. But I mean, it's just uh, taking what we've learned from previous years and getting it all to fit.
Yeah, yeah. Penny at Young's, is there something that you saw last year that you've made any changes for this year?
Well, I think the biggest thing that we just try to improve on year to year and is, with trials, the most important thing is organization. And it can be exhausting, especially with a trial garden. So just always looking for ways to streamline that and then to always also just make sure you're being consistent. And I think that that's probably, I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily, it's a lesson. It's a lesson that I go through
Yeah.
every single year.
Right.
Like every single year, I'm finding, oh, this worked better than last year. Oh, this was a better way to do that. It's just with something that big, it is hugely important that you keep everything really well labeled from beginning to end.
Mhm.
That you, like Mark said, that you make a plan where everything's going to go and it makes sense. It makes
And
sense for the people visiting the garden. It makes sense.
and
For
we're
the
we're
management.
we're commercial greenhouses in the middle of spring. And
Yeah,
so we're
That's a great
we're
point.
Right.
Yeah.
we're
that's
they're like in the
huge.
midst of Mother's Day, ramp up to Mother's Day, and then we're like, hey, we're gonna plant our little garden.
And that's huge, and, we get great support in the
Right.
company for this, but at the end of the day, you can't forget that you are a commercial greenhouse in the middle of spring, and so you kinda have to, take the help and
Yep.
the work when you can get it, and just take advantage of it.
Monday we had the carts lined up to load, and then the shippers took them. So then it was we're, we're scrambling out trying to find carts to take stuff out to the garden.
Oh, that's funny. Well, and you bring up a good point there too. And this is something that we reach out after the trial season to growers, universities, and other sites across the country, and ask about how the trials went this year, how weather was, top performers, and then as well as any concerns. One of the things we did hear, I think, pretty frequently last year was um, getting the right help to get everything ready to go and then maintain the gardens throughout the season. How do each of you kind of plan for that so that you try not to run into those sorts of issues as you're going from planting the garden all the way through to the to evaluation, especially as people are coming in, to see some of the latest plant offerings.
I can start there. So one of the things we've started is an internship program here at the garden.
Mhm.
And so students don't have to leave campus. They can actually do their internship with us at the trial garden.
Oh, nice.
And so it's sort of a combination of public garden management as well as like a greenhouse management course,
Mhm.
learning how to grow plants. And of course, it's it varies seasonally. What they're going to learn. And so like the group that will be graduating next week, they've gone through the whole, having a spring plant sale, propagating things from seed, potting up all the plugs, starting to plant the garden. Those taking the internship in the summertime will be, mostly garden maintenance sort of thing. Those in the fall, we'll start, doing tearing the garden out, doing a propagation, to save plants for our spring plant sale, and so it varies. So that really helps us, particularly. I was talking to Penny about this earlier. A lot of our volunteers are getting older and don't want to be out weeding
Mm.
or can't get down on their hands and knees anymore to do the work. So that's one thing that's really helped us is having this internship class where we've got a few strong younger backs that are willing to learn and help us out.
Sure.
In our perennial areas, we have started using pre-emergent herbicide. Something we did last year for the first time
Okay.
because we'd had a bad problem with fireweed the year before, and so that is something that we're doing new. Also, to help with nutrition, we've started incorporating a slow release fertilizer
Okay.
into the beds,
Yeah.
and we found that that really helps with our late season color because
Okay.
you know our heavy clay wants to bind onto everything, and we We have to do overhead irrigation. So if we're trying to liquid feed something, we're feeding the whole area.
Yeah.
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 So anyway, those are some of the things we've learned and are adapting into the garden this year.
Okay. Um, Penny, at Young's, kind of go back to that whole, you guys, as you said, are in the middle of peak spring right now. How do you make sure that, that there's enough resources to make sure the trials gardens are put in consistently and done the right way, each year?
Well, I will say that my company understands the importance of the trial garden and the trials. They see the rewards of having this in place. So I am fully supported. When it comes down to it, I don't have dedicated staff. I have to request staff. So that really what that comes down to is certain days of the week. Okay, yeah, you can have staff, but it's on Thursday. So, I just make sure I plan everything that I need to get done for that day. Um, and it just works out, like our garden planting day, I get about 12 people that help me out, and we get the whole garden planted in about 8 hours. It's actually kind of amazing,
Nice.
to see it all it's chaos. It's very it's very well planned, organized chaos, but it all gets done. So, I guess that's kind of what I really appreciate about my company is that they provide the resources when I need them to get the job done.
That's one of my favorite phrases today is organized chaos. I feel like we're all just living in that 24/7 organized chaos environment right now. So I like to
Well,
with that there.
and I actually have an intern working with me this season, this spring season, and so I was trying to describe to him what it was gonna be like on garden day, and I was because he couldn't believe that we would get the whole thing finished, and when it was all done, he was like, "You're right. It is chaos. It is organized chaos."
Sure. Sure. One thing I want to ask about is the decisions on what to actually plant in the gardens. And I know it's a long process, I'm sure, that goes into that. But when it comes to balancing, what you as a company or as a university want to plant, what the growers that you work with are asking about, and then also obviously, what the breeders want to do. How do you balance that into deciding, okay, here's what I'm going to put in our gardens each year? Mark, I'll start with you on that. How does that process work at Metrolina?
And it kinda goes back to what I said before. It was like, the goal is everything new for 2025.
Mhm.
And then, if there's any extra space, then it's a kind of a negotiation with the breeder or, trying to have comparison one stuff that's already in production. So we will have, something to, okay, we got something new, then, what we can compare it against. I mean, like our whole process starts, I think pennies too. Like we start like in October, year before sending out the emails and then, um, then it's just like Penny said, kind of working with the breeders, trying to get their list, what they want to submit. And then, it always comes down to, seems like week or two before trying to get it all to fit. That's always the trick. But
Yeah.
how?
So that's the exact same process that I go through. My goal is also, what's new in 2025. One interesting thing, I love it when cast is early enough that I'm able to come back and tweak what's going to be in the garden.
Sure.
As the breeders, we always ask them, hey, make sure because they'll send us this big old long list, and of course we'll have to cut some of it. Um, but I always tell them, "Make sure you mark the things that you absolutely need to be in the garden." Um, but then there will always be something that falls through the cracks, either because the breeders sort of changed their focus between the list and cast, or they've just found something else that they really wanna highlight. So I go to cast and I see all these, combinations and varieties, and, I'm constantly, while I'm at cast, making notes. "Oh, make sure this petunia's in a basket. Make sure this
Yeah.
combination is" so that works out really well to be able to see that. But that also leads me to one reason that is really, great for people within the industry to come to the Southern Garden Tour because they see all these showcase plants at Cast. Well, this is going to be their first chance to see those same plants in a garden setting.
Yeah.
Uh, so yes.
And that's a key point that I want to get to in a second. But before we do that, I just want to check in with John real quick. At the university level, how do you make the decisions on what to put in the gardens at the University of Georgia?
Yeah, so pretty much, it's up to the companies, and they send us their list of materials that they want. We do give them the option. Do you want it in a hanging basket? Do you want it in a container? Do you want it in the ground?
Mhm.
So sometimes we just because we're such a small space, we sometimes have to limit to like two options. Because we can only do about 125 baskets, 125 containers, and then probably maxing out we're about 450 in the ground,
Sure.
potentially. And so, yeah, so I tend not to get much more past cast. Um, and and again, I mean, there's always challenges. We always get the box of liners that has been completely flipped upside down.
Of course.
You know,
That never happens.
yeah, you can't tell which echinacea is what. And so there's always things like that, and like Penny said, there's always changes, last minute substitutions, or so it seems like with seed, there's a quite often maybe a seed failure or something, and so that gets pulled
Yeah.
and replaced with something else, and so, but generally we stick to the list of what people really want to trial with us, and occasionally while I'm out at cast, I can request something specifically
Okay.
and add to it, but, generally, we're pretty close to capacity by the time I go out there, so.
Okay. Okay. Well, and then that speaks to Penny's point. I mean, if you look at, what you're seeing in California spring trials is varieties obviously are the most ideal and pristine conditions. This is the chance to put everything into the ground and just really separate out, what's really going to perform well in each area. And I got to imagine that's a big focus of each of these trials is, I mean, you're trying to address the needs, not just of the growers that you work with, but also consumers as well. And kind of identify what each of those end consumer, whether it's an actual consumer, whether it's a grower, is going to be looking for from some of these new varieties. Anybody have any thoughts on just how that whole process works and how you balance those?
I mean, that's kind of like Abe always stresses it, is we have to be able to grow it, right?
Right.
That's kind of a thing. And then now, lately it's been, can we actually source the plant? Is
Right.
the supply chain in place? And then, also, can we get it from the greenhouse to the store? But I mean, our gardens are kind of the last thing, like, okay, the consumer gets this. Are they going to be successful? And that it kind of like closes the loop on like adding a new variety into the market.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same process we follow, and the trial garden is hugely important to close that loop, because you absolutely need something to be successful in the greenhouse, but to also be able to prove that it's successful in the garden so that the consumer is going to have success, so they're going to come back the next year and buy more, it
Sure.
is really important. Um, and I will say, sorry, I had a little bit of a cough. Um, yeah, so yeah, that would be it for us as well.
Okay. Okay.
And then like we have I mean, the other part of it too is we have our home garden panel.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask
And
about that.
yeah, so we kind of bring in, this is like a tool to be able to use for, 300-400 consumers that come in.
Right.
We kind of like let them, we ask them questions, specific ones, but then, kind of pick your favorite plant, so that's like another thing we can use this garden for and get like uh, actual consumer feedback on the stuff out there.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do a similar sort of thing. We'll have our industry open house on Wednesday, and then we follow it up with a public open house on Saturday.
And you guys do a great job on like, the consumer, well, what they're picking and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. And
I love getting those emails.
it's always fascinating because most years what the consumers pick is not what the commercial people pick. It's two separate lists most years.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Um,
I agree.
yeah. Yeah, and so I guess we're a little bit different because we're not having to source the plants. We're not having to, grow the plants to sell them. We're just really trying to, evaluate them under the heat and humidity and
Yep.
clay soils that we have here, and see what's really going to perform well, throughout the season. And it's always interesting to see the awards that everybody has at the end of the year. Quite often, half of the awards we give, they're getting the same awards in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Colorado. And so they're really good plants
Right.
across the
Yep.
country, but we will also pick, some different things. And then we obviously don't get the volume of our numbers to trial like either Mark or Penny would have either. So our selection is usually a bit less.
That's one thing I do enjoy doing, again, as we compile information from trials across the country, looking at some of the commonalities, but then looking at some of the differences as well. And to your point, you see some of those lists come through because we ask what were the grower favorites from the trials, what were the consumer favorites from the trials. There might be some crossover, but sometimes they're also going to be completely different lists. And then you got to decide, okay, how am I going to balance this then? If I'm, identifying what a grower wants versus what a consumer wants. I think back to,
Sure.
for example, my time, I've been with our company for going on 25 years now, but spent a lot of that time working in the outdoor fruit market. So, looking at at an apple variety like Honeycrisp, for example, when that first came out, consumers have loved it since it was first introduced. The growers early on will say, I cannot grow this the right way. It's susceptible to bitter bits, susceptible to russeting. We can't get a nice quality fruit product into the hands of the consumer, and they work through some of those to ultimately put out a nice product. But I imagine that you see some parallels
I mean,
in the work that you
going
were doing.
yeah, going way, way, way back, like Purple Wave Classic when it came out, like no one could grow it, but it did great in the garden. I mean, that's way, way back. That's yeah, but and it's kind of similar story.
30 years ago this year or 25?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
30
Yeah,
years.
it was
We're small enough. We can provide feedback, when we're trying to grow the plugs out and stuff of, hey, we happen to notice that this one's real susceptible to aphids, or, this petunia just, didn't produce any roots, or,
yeah.
very, some production
My
problems that way.
my favorite story was like Sun Patience Impatience from
Mm.
Cicada. We used to think they were like dumb. We thought it was like a dumb idea.
Yeah.
And then we put them in the trial garden, and one of the I forget who we were out there. It was like Abe and I and someone else, and we're like looking across the garden and was like, "What is that over there? That's looking really nice." And it was like Sun Patience,
Mhm.
and it was like it can like convinced us of the consumer benefit of that. Now, I mean, I think it's around the windmill now, so we really
Oh,
liked
yeah.
it.
Nice. Well, as we wind down with, I want to go right back to this year's trials. And as growers and others from across the industry plan to attend this year, I know it starts with the website southerngardentour.com. What advice would each of you have for somebody planning their trip there in terms of, what can they expect this year? What should they be looking for? And then I know you also want to have them register before they come down as well. I keep saying down because I'm in Ohio.
Well, I'll start just because mine is the first day. It's on Tuesday, June 3rd.
Mhm.
And we do want you to register. You can register at the southerngardentour.com. And then you can also choose to come to lunch if you want. Our garden opens at 8. It's quite busy in the morning, but that's a great time to come because it's usually before it's 95 degrees and humidity. So we have a lot of visitors in the morning and that stay for lunch, and then a few stragglers in the afternoon. A little more if the weather cooperates. But yeah, start with us early on Tuesday morning, and then that gives you time Tuesday afternoon to drive up to Athens.
Yeah, and then your next stop's University of Georgia, John.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So we're open all day. We're formally there from 8 to 12 in the morning. Same sort of thing. By 11 o'clock, it's usually getting pretty hot and humid, and the crowds start to thin out at that point. But the garden's open all day. People are welcome to stop by and visit anytime. For us being on campus, the main thing is make sure you park in the parking deck like that. The parking police will find you. Um, you know, and but it's a quick walk across the street over to the garden. So anyway, yeah, 8 to 12, we're out there. If you come later, that's fine. You're welcome to stop by. Sandy will probably still be out there in the garden, but yeah, you can go to lunch. Downtown Athens is a real nice place to visit.
Very nice. And Dr. A always tells me about downtown Athens, so I know I have to check it out someday.
Come down sometime.
I definitely will. And then you wrap up the Metrolina it's the June 5th.
Kind of same story as Penny. Most of our attendance is in the morning. We'll, have a sign up for lunch. The garden's open all day. Just be prepared to walk a lot in our garden. So, yeah, but it should be a good day.
Very nice. And again, for those listening to this, southerngardentour.com to learn more information and to register for the event this year. John, Penny, Beverly, Mark, I want to thank all of you for being on the call today.
Thank you, Brian.
Looks like it's going to be another exciting event this year.
Yep. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can learn more at greenhousegrower.com. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, and please leave us a rating as it helps other podcast listeners find the show.